Deconverted Man here. For Christ left a long comment on my live video, which shows that he listened to what I said, although he didn't mention lobsters in his post, so maybe he didn't get to the end. I don't know. Anyway, so I want to kind of muss on what he said. I like that word, mussing. It's like, I'm thinking about it. But anyway, so here's that. All right. Firstly, I want to clarify that the video I posted wasn't meant to be a deeply academic presentation. It was aimed at younger viewers and meant to feel like a casual conversation. Okay. I don't know why I'm doing that voice. No reason. Just, that's what struck me. Not meant to be an attack on him or anything like that. Well, this video is not meant to be a rebuttal to anything you say, nor is it meant to be academic presentation, nor is it meant to be X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. This is live, so no script, no editing, just whatever comes to my brain. So some leeway of understanding and forgiveness can be applied to it. If I say something incorrect, it's like, yeah, okay, yeah. But I try my best to say things in a way that are true to the best of the ability I can say them. So I try not to paint with a broad brushstroke of saying many or all or majority of theists do X or Christians are this way or whatever, because, well, unless I have a poll that shows that this is somewhat true, then I'm just saying stuff that I personally think is true. So I believe that X is true would be a better statement to make, or I think that this might be the case, or it seems to me that this is true, or I think that this might be, based on my personal observations, something like that. That's how I approach saying things about a big group of people. I'm going to get it wrong. I'm not going to say it right every time, especially if I'm doing it live. If I do it recorded and I screw up, hammer me for it, please. And I might even, more than likely, I'll make a video saying, hey, I was wrong in that other video, because I want to correct myself and I want to be honest in my correction, and I want to say, hey, look, what I said before was wrong. I'll leave up both videos because, it's like, look, yeah, I was wrong, and I'm okay with that. It's not easy sometimes, but it is necessary. But your video, whatever it was meant to be, doesn't free it from the obligation to do the best that you can do. In fact, I would say even more important if you're talking to younger people, to be completely honest and transparent with them. You don't have to talk down to younger people. First of all, you don't need to have a casual conversation. You just need to have logic and facts. And if you don't have that, then don't even bother. It doesn't have to be an academic presentation to be right. And everything you said in your video was pretty much wrong in various ways, and wrong in terms of logic, in terms of presentation, the countless strawmen against atheism, the incoherent framework of the arguments. There's no reason that you can't lay out the moral argument in a syllogistic format to younger people. This is an excuse, not an explanation. I didn't mean for this to be looked at this way. I mean, it wasn't meant to be a professional debate. I'm not, that doesn't free you of the burden to tell the truth and to make a video free of logical fallacies. More so if you're directing it at younger people. And if you're worried they won't understand complicated words, then explain it. Okay, that makes the video longer, but then that's doing a service. And so I don't buy it. and this is not the only time this kind of excuse has come my way. I've seen this before in the past where people have said, my video isn't meant to be this, it wasn't meant to be an argument, it wasn't meant to. No, doesn't matter. You're not free from scrutiny, period. You put an idea out there and you say that that idea is true, we're going to hammer you for it. We're going to come at you and say, prove your ideas are true. Demonstrate how your ideas are true. Give me a valid and sound argument. You didn't give us even a valid argument because you give us no syllogism. So there's absolutely nothing to analyze there. Although what you said did still contain logical fallacies, which mean there is even more reason to doubt what you say. More so because you didn't present the moral argument in the syllogistic format that it comes in. There's several versions of it, by the way. And then the creation argument, there, well, I don't know if there's syllogistic formats of that, but they might be out there. So there's no excuse for not doing the best that you could do. And then leave atheists out of it, because atheism has nothing to do with theism. That is to say, knocking down, if you even could do that, the atheist whatever doesn't prove theism, not even a little. In fact, it's the other way around. All you have to do to prove theism is prove God, and then atheism isn't a thing anyways. But if there was ample evidence of God, there would be no, well, there'd be no atheist asterisk, where the asterisk is the sort of atheists that we have today, that don't believe in God because of evidence or lack thereof. There'd still probably be people that would be atheists, but for different reasons. Like they would think God's a conspiracy or something like that. Be akin to, there are people that are flat earth believers, even though the rest of us all know the earth is obloid spheroid, and there's no reason to doubt that. There's plenty of evidence for it. These flat earther people really are committed to their belief. And there was a flat earth, or the final experiment done, TFE, I'll call it the flat earth, but they went to, I always mix up which pole they went to, North or South Pole, I'm not sure. But they went to one of the poles and they watched the sun not set, and all the flat earther people that didn't go are claiming basically that the whole video is a hoax, that people were paid, whatever they need to do to keep their belief alive, because they're not interested in the truth. They're interested in keeping the ideas that they hold sacred and unchallenged. Anyway, so saying this doesn't excuse you. In fact, if anything, saying that it's for young people makes it even worse than it would have been otherwise. It's still bad, but now it's more bad than it was before. Although the topic is philosophical in nature, my goal wasn't to make it deeply rooted in formal logic or argumentation. Okay, so your goal is to just say stuff and hope people believe you then? I don't. Your goal should be to present the truth. That's it. That should be your goal. And the methodology to know that something is true is either empirical evidence, or repeatable test, or a valid and sound argument. You don't have empirical evidence or a repeatable test when it comes to God, for various reasons you could come up with. So the only thing you would have would be a valid and sound argument. So if you don't make that, you literally have nothing. But simply to spark thought and conversation in a way that's relatable and clear, especially for younger audience, it was critiqued as such. Well, I critique your video regardless of who it's made for or why. Again, if you put out something, it's going to be critiqued by somebody somewhere, and I'm glad to have done it. Maybe others will do it as well. Who knows? But yeah, it's going to get slammed in all different ways by those that are interested enough to do it. In fact, a few comments, I think, have already raised some serious questions for you. But yeah, you appreciate my thoughtful commentary. I'd love to have a respectful discussion sometime if I'm open to that. Absolutely. deconvertedman1@gmail.com is my email. You can email me. You tell me a day and time that you want to do a talk. like at least a day in advance of when you, like, not that day that you email me or the day after, but a day after that, so I have some time to prepare. I'm in Eastern Standard Time, so translate your time zone to mine, and there you go. Yeah, okay. Mentioned this was a false dichotomy at 150. Just to be clear, presented from a Christian perspective. Being from a Christian perspective doesn't negate that it's a false dichotomy. The Christians say there is a God, so there is no not God in the Christian perspective. So there's not even a dichotomy in the Christian perspective. It's just there is a God in the Christian perspective. But you said it's either God or this other thing. And I'm saying, well, no, in the Christian perspective, there's God, and that's it. That's the end of the story. So you saying there's this other choice puts it outside of the Christian perspective already, because the Christian perspective doesn't allow for not God. So you can't have it both ways. It's still a fallacy. God intentionally created the universe, not by random chance. Well, does the Bible really say how God created the universe? I mean, it's pretty vague on how God does it. It says, "Let there be light," and then then it kind of describes some actions, but it doesn't say how God did any of the things it did. So there's interpretation there that you could say, well, that was all by chance. You don't know. I don't know. It's not very clear. It's not written to be a science book, that's for sure. Of course, everything Genesis says is wrong scientifically, but I'm just saying within the story that you're given, I think that you could say, well, maybe God did it by chance. You don't know. That's a theological thing, though, to resolve. More than anything else, I wouldn't really be interested in the theology thereof, because, well, you can't prove your theology more than anyone else can prove their theology. But since that's true, I think that, yes, you could say God made it by chance for all we know, even within Christianity. But at any rate, I said that many atheists deny the existence of a spiritual world. That may not apply to every atheist. And it also may not apply to many atheists. That's the point. But it's fair to say that many hold to materialism. No, it's not fair to say anything. You don't know the numbers. I don't know the numbers either. I have no idea how many hold to anything. So unless you want to raise some money and we'll, get Pew Research to do a survey for us, we're not going to know the answer to that question. We don't know how many atheists hold whatever view. I mean, within the limited scope of people I know, I can ask around, and that would be a very small sample size. Whoever decides to answer my question, first of all, and then secondly, whatever that is, maybe 12, 13 people, whatever I can get, and whether they apply, whether they hold to materialism / naturalism or not, and we can say, okay, X amount of them do, and then that's something, but it's not as good as a bigger survey would be. So it's not fair to say this unless you are saying it in a way that makes it clear that this is your personal opinion. I think that atheists are naturalists, or I think that it's more likely, or something like that. But that's not what you said in your video. Just a general observation based on how the modern world seems to lean. Well, yeah, and again, that's what you should have said in your video then. That this is my view based on this. You didn't say that. I asked, why does it matter one set of chemicals does another set of chemicals? And my response is, it matters if those chemicals produce unease in a creature. Linguistically, calling something a creature presupposes it has a creator. No, it doesn't. It's a creature. Creature. What? Let's look up the meaning of creature. An animal as distinct from a human being. An animal or a person. Fictional or imaginary being. So let's see. Something created animate or inanimate, such as a lower animal, especially farm animal, human being, or let's see, anomalous or uncertain aspect of nature, one that's servile dependent of tool or another. Okay, so that that's writing in Webster there. So let's see, creature in Cambridge. Let's see, any large or small living thing that can move independently, used to refer to a life form that's unusual or imaginary, used to refer to a person when an opinion is being expressed by them. So yeah, I think that maybe you have one dictionary that you could appeal to say that kind of says that, but you're just playing word games at this point. No, it doesn't presuppose that. Anyways, it's just your personal opinion. Yeah, I agree. It is my personal opinion that humans are more or matter to other humans. It is also a fact that humans matter to other humans. It's not just my personal opinion. It's also true that humans care about other humans more than rocks. And humans tend to care about other life forms above rocks. Find me, there are geologists, so geologists care about rocks, but I don't think that they would think that I could ask my geologist friend, if he thinks that rocks are more important than humans. So this is just a nonsense nothingness here. Okay. Without an objective moral standard above humanity, you can't say anything is truly right or wrong. That is a belief that that is contained in the moral argument, which is just, in my view, precept with extra steps. Yes, we can in fact say things are right or wrong, whether there is or isn't an objective morality. I disagree on that point. And in my book, I outline, as I said, a argument that gives us a way to view that, to view morals as being logically derived from a few set of basic principles that we have. We'll get to that in a moment here. You said causing unnecessary harm can be seen purely wrong by logic. The logic itself is an immaterial, abstract concept. No, not fully. So kind of, but no. Logic, at least informal logic, because we want to specify what logic we're talking about. And of course, when I say logic, I usually mean informal logic, and I just forget to add. It's like, I got to remember, but because there's math logic and yada yada. Informal logic is based upon formulas that formal logic derived from, well, back to Aristotle, but others developed it over time. And these are principles that we observe to be true in reality, like the law of identity, A equals A. That is true. That's just it. That's the true fundamental force of reality, as far as we know. Even if there's a God, A still equals A. Even if there isn't a God, A still equals A. And God itself would be subservient beneath logic. And theists don't like that, but it's true. And here's why. Logic is the fundamental thing of reality. Okay? So God equals God. That's the law of identity. If God can somehow not be God, and only because God logic is actualized, then logic is subjective and has no actual meaning. Or logic is, and God is somewhat subservient to logic. That is to say, God is as much under the laws of logic as everything else is. God can't negate logic unless you want an illogical God. And if you propose such a being, then everything is off the table. All bets are off, and forget about it. You have a nonsense universe and a nonsense reality at that point, which you can propose if you want. But I would think that Christians would tend to want a logically coherent being, not an illogical one. So God is under the laws of logic and is not required for the laws of logic. With or without God, there are still the laws of logic from which we derive other ideas from, and we can form arguments. But none of that is something that is anything more than an observation of how things work, which is why we refine it over time, and why we make sure that it still works and that the formulas still work out. And within informal logic, yeah, if you have a logical argument structured correctly and each of the premises are true, then you have a valid and sound argument. If your premise isn't true because of a logical fallacy, then you don't have a sound argument, and then you have to be questioning the conclusion. The conclusion could be true on its own, but you don't know that within the system of logic itself. It's not immaterial. This goes to a different video I did at some point. The immaterial doesn't mean what you think it means. Immaterial in what sense? Because logic is grounded in the universe and in our brain. Our brain is physical, the universe is physical. So there's no immaterial there. By immaterial is the only reason it's called that is because there's a lack of words that we have. Abstract ideas like numbers, musical notes, words themselves are immaterial in that they aren't a thing that you can find in nature, but they are based in solely and on the material world in our brain. If our brains aren't, then those words cease to be. Now, the things that they represent are still there. There's an apple, whether there's a human there to observe the apple or not, but it's not called an apple. It's not called anything anymore. So the so-called immaterial is an object of the brain. So immaterial things exist in the brain and not anywhere else. So if you want to conflate the immaterial logic with your God, then that makes your God an object of the brain and not real, in the sense that you and I are real. Logic is real in the sense of an abstract construct that matches reality, but you can demonstrate it by the formula. Can you demonstrate God by a formula? Well, people have tried, but they fail to do so for some reason. I don't know why that is. I have some ideas, though. Why appeal to something immaterial if you believe everything is purely material? Why do you assume that I am believing that everything is purely material? That's an assumption on your part. You think that I believe this. You don't know what I believe. Ask me. But no, I don't think that logic is immaterial in the sense that you might think it is. As I said, logic is an idea that is in our brain, and it is a reflection of reality that we observe and we understand to some degree. And as such, if we learn something new about reality, we would then have to change logic to match the new facts of reality. Okay, it's unlikely. Well, I don't know if it's likely or unlikely. Who knows? But it seems to have worked so far. We haven't had to change it a lot. Maybe a few fallacies have been added here or there, but the core of logic hasn't really changed too much throughout time so far. Let's see, I'm well aware of the difference between a rock and a human being. I don't know that you are, though. From an atheistic view, so again, there is no atheistic view. This is an incorrect statement to make. There's no atheist worldview. There's no atheistic view. These words aren't coupled together. There is no theistic view either, by the way. Okay? Now, you believe this because you believe in other things, and all these beliefs merge to create your own view of how to understand the world, and I'm trying to correct your view of reality to this extent, if nothing else. We're not going to agree that there is or isn't a God or whatever, and that's fine. But hopefully you'll agree to this, because it's true as far as I understand logic and everything else. Saying atheistic view is like saying the color pink smells like Pikachu. It makes no sense. It's incoherent. There are atheists that have views, but there is no the view of atheists. The only thing we agree on is we don't believe in God. That's it. That's the only thing that is our view, if you will. So there is no atheistic view. So get that out of your head. Stop thinking in terms of worldview. Okay, Christianity is a worldview. Theism isn't. Okay, so this is what words mean. Atheism, theism are not by themselves a worldview, because they don't tell you anything beyond I believe or I don't believe. That's it. They don't tell you anything more. It's only when you get in particular versions of theism or atheism that maybe then you would have a worldview. But there is no versions of atheism, because it doesn't have denominations like theism does. It doesn't have branches like theism does. So it's very different in that sense. But in terms of what a worldview is, Republican, Democrat, these are not worldviews. Okay, they are political affiliations, but I'm a Republican. Well, what's the Republican view? Well, there's certain things that Republican view would cover, but it certainly wouldn't be a worldview. And also, many Republicans might say, no, that's not my view as a Republican. So pinning that down would be pretty much impossible. So there might not exactly be a Republican view, because it's not a worldview. It's a political party with certain things that they're supposed to stand for and supposed to sway in this or that direction. Whether they do or not is another matter. But my point is, it's not a worldview. And nor is theism, nor the word atheism. There is no worldview for these things. Stop using words wrong. That's what you did in your video. Others have done it that aren't you. Be the one to not do the thing that is incorrect. Use words correctly. That's all. It's not that difficult. The old diamond is a carbon-based life form. That's true. We are all carbon-based life forms. Both exist to random chance. Ultimately, there's no deeper value or purpose attached to human life than a rock. I mean, I don't care if that's true or not. I don't know what you mean by that. You're saying there's no objectively thing, but I'd say, well, there's no deeper purpose attached to a human life if everything is created by God. How do I know that God doesn't value rocks over me? Or the lobsterist says, lobsters are the highest form of life and humans are an accident. So how do I know that's not true? Actually, I know that the lobsterist is true because I've read it. I can't say it's not true now. If you don't understand, you have to listen to Captive Desk, read the lobsterist, or read it yourself, either way. But at any rate, the value that we put is perhaps subjective. So what? That doesn't mean that you're right about us not viewing rocks and human in the same way, because obviously we don't agree with you on this point, but you present it as if we must agree with your point, but we don't. You need to make an argument free of fallacies, and that includes telling me what I think, feel, and believe. If our acquittal was based on our performance, we receive what we justly deserve. Judgment for rebellion against God. Christian God is not a just for forgiving sinners. He is both just and merciful, heart of the gospel. Well, I mean, your system of justice doesn't align with what you presented in your video. You had a scenario where a judge judged a person that had killed an entire family and found them guilty, and you said if they didn't do that, you would find that to be rather wrong. I agree. But you failed to include the Christian judgment, which is very different from our system of judgment, where the judge would say, hey, look, you can get off scot-free if you let my son step in for you and do the sacrifice in your place. You can wiggle around all you want, but that is the Christian system. You have a get out of jail free card. I don't consider that justice. If you do, that's on you. I mean, God's justice demand sin be punished unless you do the certain things that you're supposed to do, then sin isn't punished. Again, if you allow God to give you the scapegoat, you accept the scapegoat, then you don't get punished. So God doesn't make you get punished if you do the right thing. If you do the thing that God wants, which is believe Jesus died for your sin, and maybe you have to get baptized, maybe you have to say it out loud, depends on which version of Christian you are, but if you do the right actions and thoughts, and those thoughts and actions please God, then you get saved, so you don't actually get punished. So it's not the cosmic justice that you portrayed in your video. So therefore, what you portray in your video isn't true, is it? Because it's not your system. So if you're going to portray your system of Christianity in your video as a metaphor, then do that, fine. But you didn't. And I point that out in my live response. Okay. Roman says, whatever, don't care. Yeah, we find choices in our bodies exact opposite of we were designed. Yeah, well, I don't know that I said that, but our body is not made like anyone insane designed it, at any rate. If I am to consider this designed, I have so many questions. This is nonsense. Why this head? Why not a square head? Why this shape rather than some other shape? Why this many limbs? Why this? What's special about this format? It's completely subjective and arbitrary. This format makes sense from a biological evolutionary perspective. We have no choice but to have round heads because that's what fits through the birth canal best. In fact, maybe we would ask why our heads aren't more pointy, but our heads start off pretty soft when they come out. So, and by the way, birth doesn't always work very well. Why would that be? These are just not very good design choices. And that's just based on how design functions in reality, based on, you go, okay, hey, here's headphones. And if they fell apart, the moment I picked them up, they wouldn't be very good headphones, would they? And if they were designed to sometimes grip fluid, I don't think that that would be a very good design, okay? And that's what I'm saying. This doesn't appear to be designed. These are bad choices to make. These are choices made by an incompetent designer. And you can disagree with that, but that is my viewpoint. I think that this would be, if you want to press for design, I'll say, fine, I'll agree. It's designed, but the designer's an idiot. So if you want a nitwit designer, okay. But if you accept the reality of biological evolution, which is true whether there's a God or not, it makes a lot more sense why this is our format. I don't know that God picked it for us or not. Maybe God's just allowed it to happen this way for whatever God's reasons are to do that. I don't know, but at least then you're closer to reality than you currently are. It's not begging the question. I assume design has a certain criteria. Well, I assume that design is not made incompetently. So, yeah, I guess there's a criteria there. I don't know. Yeah, and then the web expert has a lot of responses that are great and wonderful, and your response to that was just to like, oh yeah, that's good. We could go back and forth on that a long time, and yeah, yeah. He you know, maybe instead of talking to me, I'll have you talk to him instead. That might make for a very interesting video. I don't know, but it'd have to be on his schedule and his time if he wanted to do that. I'd have to ask him. But at any rate, yeah, deconvertedman1@gmail.com is my email. He can, you know, see if he'll talk to me or not. I don't know. But yeah, I'm not, I mean, I'm not surprised by any of this text response. Um, you know, it's nothing I haven't seen before. Um, there's the excuse of, well, it's not made for, it doesn't matter. Do the best you can. Okay, I shouldn't have to be telling a Christian that wants people, I would think, to be saved, to present the truth, not to present half-hearted attempt. Well, yeah, whatever, it was good enough. I mean, come on, really? Do the best you can. Make sure that your arguments are valid and sound. Make sure that you are presenting the best version of the argument. Make sure you're saying things that are true, not just personal views or opinions. Or if you're going to include personal views and opinions, make sure that you say that they're personal views and opinions. Don't water it down because it's targeted at youth. In fact, if anything, it should be laid out in a coherent way that educates, not talks down to. So there is no excuse. You can do better. You should do better. You must do better. Fix your arguments. They're broken. Fix your video. It's broken. So I hope that you produce a video where you amend your errors. You make a coherent argument instead. You present the actual arguments, and you do so to the best of your ability. They'll still maybe contain logical fallacies, but at least you'll have tried. All right, that's all I've got for now. And the truth shall be revealed. Yes. All right, thanks for watching. Until next time, well, be skeptical. And after next time, stay skeptical, because why would you not be skeptical? That's just crazy talk. I don't know. All right.